this very, very interesting, controversial topic. Um, the topic that I've been given to speak to you about this afternoon is love in Palestine, but I've changed my topic a little bit, slightly to not love in Palestine, but to love in Palestinians. I want to focus more on the people of Palestine rather than the country of Palestine, the land of Palestine. Um, we we love the Palestinians? Because if you love the Palestinians, if you love if you love Palestinians, you will love the the country. But there's just such an issue when you start speaking about the country, the land, these all the technicalities, which are important, and I don't want to downplay that at all. But I want to focus on the people. Um, and as and as Christians, I want to focus on speaking to you as Christians, and um, especially Christians who are completely pro-Israel, because it's so easy to dehumanize people. Do you, and the Palestinian people have often been dehumanized. Um, and when we dehumanize people, we see them as less than human. They are not fully human. That's what we're saying when we dehumanize people, and we treat them accordingly. We treat them like animals, or less than animals even. Sometimes we even pamper our animals. But, we get upset when our animals die. We get upset when our animals are knocked over. We get upset when animals are mistreated. But somehow we justify when people are mistreated. That's dehumanization. See, dehumanization, someone said that dehumanization is a mental loophole that lets people harm other people. And it's common in the this is a common colonialist mindset, and a justification for apartheid in any form, justification for racism, because what we're saying is, I'm human, this is what humanity is, that you're not human. So it doesn't matter if you lose your life, it doesn't matter if you hurt yourself, it doesn't matter if you don't have a home, it doesn't matter if you're oppressed, because ultimately the mindset of dehumanization says you're not fully human anyway, so to me it doesn't matter. And that's what dehumanization, what happens when we dehumanize people. We we mistreat them, and we justify the mistreating of them. See, the moment that we hear of an injury of a child, when that a child has been injured in a bomb blast or whatever, or a hospital is blown up, and we use some kind of justification to say yes, but they were being used as human shields, and we justify it in some way. And when that justification is your primary priority over the empathy of a child, a life has been lost, then we've dehumanized the people. We don't treat them as human. We don't treat them as equals, because we'd rather see the principle of whatever's happening come above the life that has been taken. We'd rather justify it by someone who's doing something, rather than our empathy to say, there's a child that's been lost, regardless of the circumstances. I feel for that child. I feel for the mother of that child who's lost that child. And if we put the justification for what has happened, and we try and justify it over and above our empathy, it shows that in our heart, we've dehumanized them. And that's so often happening with the Palestinian people, when we do not empathize with them at all. Oh man, I've heard so many apparent justifications of the atrocities against the Palestinian people, and I'm horrified that so many followers of Christ dehumanize the Palestinian people in the way that what they do. What a disgrace! What is this disgrace? I've even heard some deny their very existence, saying, "Who are the Palestinians? There isn't such a people." Wow, what a disgrace to eradicate. Um, for someone who claims to be a Christian, history is cited, maps opposed and all other kinds of justification to try to eradicate the validity of the Palestinian people and them living in the land. The fact is that they do live in the land, they do own the land they live in, and they do exist as a people loved by God. Trying to deny these facts is merely a response of dehumanization of the Palestinian people, loved by God. How can we say that? How can we say that God loves the Palestinian people, loves the Jews? No. Yes, He loves the Palestinian people. God so loved the world. No exceptions. No, you say, it's not God so loved the world, well, except the Palestinian people. God so loved the world that He gave His only Son. God so loved the world that, including the Palestinians, in Revelations we see that every tribe and tongue and language will be before the throne of God. Every tribe, including the Palestinians, will be there. We cannot deny that God also loves and has included the Palestinians in His plans. And to deny that is to deny the very heart of God. Who are we to think that we or the Jews are better than the Palestinians, that God would love us? Jesus would give His life for us, but not for them. Let us remember that no one is above another in the eyes of God, and we are all what we are by the grace of God. By the grace of God, nothing else. We are what we are. We have no right to consider ourselves above the Palestinian people. Let us then primarily ask, who are the Palestinians? Let us then not primarily ask, who are the Palestinians, but what are the Palestinians? Palestinians are people created by God in His image and likeness like the rest of us. But you're stating the obvious, you might say. Yes, the obvious obviously needs to be stated in the light of dehumanization. Obviously, once we've dehumanized people, we have to remind ourselves who they are and what they are. People created in the image and likeness of God. But some of them are sinful. Aren't we all? Aren't we all? But by the grace of God, Paul says, I'm the greatest of sinners. Why are we judging people about sinfulness? When a Palestinian is cut, they bleed red blood like the rest of us. When they lose a loved one, they feel the same emotional pain and trauma that any one of us feel when losing a loved one. And that's traumatic. And there are many, right now, there are many Palestinian mothers going through so much trauma. Do we feel for that mother who's lost a child? Do you feel that for that father who's lost a child? Do you feel for the man who's lost his wife, the wife who's lost her husband, the child who's lost a father? Do we feel for them? Or are they just Palestinians? How do they rate in your scale? Are they people? But are they people? They are people. You see, when someone walks into our houses, and if someone walks into their house and violates their privacy, is traumatic, especially when they tell them to leave, saying, this house is mine. Imagine someone coming into your house saying, hey, you know what, we've decided we want your house for that person. He's just immigrated from Nigeria. He's a Cuban engineer, and he needs lots of water, and he's just migrated here, and we want your house for him. You can just leave your stuff. You can take some of it. But you see, this is what the Palestinians are enduring all the time. And this is what actually was a problem in East Jerusalem. I will get into this. But let's be honest. How many of us squealed about when our government spoke about expropriation of land without compensation? this is what the Palestinians have been going through for years. How would you feel if your community builds houses due to the growth of population, and you want to get the right paperwork, but you cannot get the paperwork together because the government, due to corruption, won't give it to you. So you build houses anyway because you need them. Your houses are getting too small, they're not enough, so you build them. And then the government, once you've built them, after you've built them, the government comes in and demolishes them. This is what's been happening with the Palestinians, especially in Area C of the Palestinian land. It's Palestinian land administered by Israel and under the Israeli military. And so of course the population is growing as normal. All populations are growing. It's not an abnormal phenomenon. And so they need more housing. They build houses, and they don't and they can't get permission, so they build them anyway because they need it. And so what happens is, we see on the news often, why is the military coming and demolishing? They're demolishing them because they don't have the paperwork. Why haven't they got the paperwork? Israel just drags its feet or doesn't give them the paperwork. It's just a form of oppression. It's keeping them. It's a form of dehumanization. They can sleep in the streets. Dogs sleep in the street. Dehumanization, that kind of mindset. You see, not right. And so, of course, do we justify this, or do we feel the anguish when this is happening to them? Do we feel their pain? Palestinians are given water. When I was in Ramallah a couple of years ago, a few years ago, walking through the streets of Ramallah, I noticed that most of the houses have water tanks, but across the valley, not far, you could see the houses very clearly of the Jewish settlement. They've got water 24/7. Here in Ramallah, the Palestinians are getting water twice a week. Think of that. And if they miss, for some reason, they don't manage to get their water, they just miss, and they go without until the water's given to them the next time. And so it's a basic need, another way to dehumanize the Palestinian people. I'm not pro-Hamas, and Hamas, we always hear, when you talk about Palestine, people always talk about Hamas. Now, of course, I'm anti-violence in any way. I'm always anti-violence. I do not agree with Hamas. I do not agree with the Hamas ideology. I do not agree with Hamas values. The same way I don't agree with some of our parties here in South Africa, and that doesn't mean I hate South Africans. It just means I don't agree with that party. And the fact that the majority of Palestinians in the West Bank are under Fatah, not Hamas, means that they don't agree with Hamas either. They don't want Hamas, and they don't agree with Hamas. So we're not anti-Palestinian when we say we're anti-Hamas. It just means that we're anti-Hamas, not anti-Palestinian. And not that I totally agree with Fatah either. But they have to, like us, we have to make do with what we got. I don't agree with any of our parties, but you have to choose one. So you're not anti the Palestinian people because you're anti that party or that group of people, and so we can't always raise the issue of Hamas. Not everyone is Hamas when you talk about the Palestinians, and we have to remember that we shouldn't equate the two. But also we so often hear of the issue of they'll never become right because they can't even see eye to eye amongst themselves. No, they can't. That makes them normal. Neither can we in South Africa. Our political parties don't agree with each other. So don't use that against them. Just see it as normal. In America, the Democrats and the Republicans don't see eye to eye. So it's a normal that leadership within the groups don't see eye to eye on the way ahead of things. It just makes them normal. Now, let's go on. I know I'm going to go slightly over my time, but as Christians, we are called to love people, including the Palestinian people. Jesus said, "A new commandment I give to you: love one another as I've loved you." But as Christians, yes, well, okay, well, let's start with loving Palestinian Christians. Then, if you're a Christian, and maybe many of them are abused and rejected by the Western Church just because of the Palestinians. And well, if we hate them, we can't say we love God and yet hate our brother. It's not possible, says the Word of God. But also Jesus said, "Love your neighbor," and He also said, "Love your enemy." So He's never given us an option, hasn't given us an option but to love the Palestinian people. Doesn't leave hatred and dehumanization as an option of the Palestinian people. Neither should they just be tolerated. For Christ-like love is always proactive. It always takes the first step to love the other person. It always seeks the best for the other person. Are we seeking the best for the Palestinian people? I just want to run through 5 quick points on how to show love to Palestinians in a practical way. Make an effort to meet Palestinians in person. Many critics of the Palestinian people have never met a Palestinian. You're criticizing people you don't even know. How can you judge someone you haven't even met? It's easy to judge people from a distance when you've never met them. However, when you meet them, build a relationship with them, it puts flesh and blood to what used to be an idea, a statistic, something that was just a hindrance to your plan. But now it's flesh. Now this person's flesh and blood. Hey, they're a wonderful person. Now you see that Palestinian isn't just that object, but a person. Just wanting to live a normal life like you and me. Stop dehumanizing them, the Palestinians. Treat them as equals. Meet Palestinians. Listen to their stories. Listen to their perspectives. Listen to their heartaches and cries. Listen to their plights. Speak out on their behalf. Speak out on their behalf. Proverbs 31:8-9. Speak up. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all those who are destitute. Speak up and judge fairly. Defend the rights of the poor. Speak up for them when they're oppressed. Condemn all forms of oppressions and speak up for them. Stand with them. Support them in practical ways wherever possible. I've got a friend, South African friend, who just serves the Palestinians. He's got a company based in Jerusalem, but he goes into focus on Palestinian villages, poor villages, and he goes and he provides wheelchairs to those who need wheelchairs free of charge, refurbished wheelchairs. And go and serve them in other ways, see where help is needed, and serve them, pray for them.